So now comes the time for the last effect, which is snow. And this is probably the hardest effect, but like I said before, it makes up for itself because it's also the most fun. Or the funnest part of the project overall. I enjoyed doing this, and it's a lot of fun to get it to look right and see what it comes out to, but you have to still have a bit of a skill to apply it and know how to work with it. It took me a little bit of trial and error to get it just right. I had to practice quite a bit. Obviously, I made a whole other set of these locomotives before, a long time ago, to find out through trial and error what I could and couldn't do with the baking soda, snow effects, and everything else. Now, you're probably wondering how I'm going to do the clumping snow and everything like that, and larger buildups like that. I am not going to be doing it with all baking soda here, and this is the most important part of this project, and this is where I'm going to start the snow effects with, is actually talking about doing the snow buildup and the drifts of the larger piles of snow. They're basically up on the walkways and on the damage here and everything else. And what I used originally to do this was Decks Spackling. This stuff here. You guys probably recognize this. If you've done any kind of housework or anything like that, you probably have a jar of this laying around. Use it for drywall. It's basically drywall compound. This stuff is the pink formula, so it goes on pink. This stuff's a little bit old now, but I can still use it. But normally it's pretty moist and pink right out of the container. This stuff's been sitting a while. I've had this for a couple of years now, and I only use it occasionally. But it's going to be getting a good workout this time around for this project. Now, what I'm going to have to do here is break it down with water, but if you get a container of this, a relatively fresh container, and you scoop it right out of the container, it's going to be pretty soft and pretty moist, so it'll be a little easier to work with for you. But I'm going to have to do this the harder way. But essentially, I'm going to be building up all of my snow drifts. Everything like that is going to be built up with the Decks Spackling compound. The issue that I found with the baking soda snow effects here, and using it this way, and again, this is just kind of what I found. There might be another way to do this that I haven't found yet. I'm sure there is. But trying to clump up the baking soda or build it up in layers, once you get one layer down, it's hard to put more glue over it and then continually put more and more baking soda over that one layer that you glued down, because it starts to crumble, it gets a little bit weak, and it'll start to crack, and it just won't sit right. And what ended up happening on one of the models that I did with this effect in the first days is that I tried it this way and it all crumbled off. So this is why I'm using a base coat of the Decks Spackle to basically model the build-up first, and then the baking soda is just the outer, physical layer that you're going to be looking at. This is what's actually going to be making the, the snow effect. So it's a two-part system that I have here. Other little effects, like certain areas, like on the roof, or other little smaller buildups of snow, I'll be doing with straight baking soda, and I'll of course demonstrate that. Now, the material you'll want to use to glue it all down is the glue mix, or just Elmer's white glue. You can also use like a glue-all formula like this, where this isn't just straight white glue, this is a bit stronger glue. I suppose you could use wood glue, but it's a little bit harsher to work with. It's harder to work with too. So, but you can dilute it down and use it in similar, kind of in a similar manner. But this is what I basically developed. I have a bottle of leftover scenic glue that I made, which is basically I'd say 40 parts Elmer's glue and 60 parts water. It's I basically shook it up a little bit and mixed it together, so you can see it's pretty diluted. It's basically the consistency of milk, but this is a really good formula to use for the snow. So this is what I'm going to be using to glue the actual snow to the spackle once it's dry. So obviously quite a mouthful there, but I just wanted to get that explanation out of the way. Obviously it's kind of important. I want you guys to know exactly what I'm using here and how I'm going to use it. I'll try to demonstrate it as best I can. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and get right into this. Alright, well, I've taken a little bit of this spackle compound. I have a piece of styrene right now too to kind of mix it. Like I said, I had to kind of spike this and bring it back to life a little bit. So I've basically taken a little water and basically brought it back to life here. I have it mixed up on my styrene sheet, and I'm ready to start applying this. My favorite application, or applicator rather, is X-Acto blade here, like a chisel blade. I find this works especially well. And what you do is you just take a little bit at a time, and you just basically start putting it up on the walkway of the engine. And I know this looks kind of weird at first, but you guys will kind of see this as it starts to make sense here, or it'll start to make sense here rather, kind of towards the end. Clean up that little bit there. I'll have to do something about that in a little bit, but we'll clean this up. It'll be alright. But essentially what I'm going to try to do is build this up in the corners. I'm going to try to kind of make it look a little clumpy. Just sort of random. Just like how if real snow's kind of blowing around on something, it's not all going to be perfectly uniform and everything. So I'm just trying to kind of keep it random here for the moment. Working in small little areas at a time. So like right now I'm just kind of trying to get it started, but what I'm going to end up doing is going back once it's set up a little bit more, and I'll basically form it down a little bit more, as you'll see. But this is just the first process, is actually just getting it on there and getting into its rough shape. Again, I know I'm kind of getting a little sloppy with this, but I'll clean it up in a second. That's the nice thing about this stuff, is it is water-based, so you can easily remove it if you don't want it somewhere. Just kind of trying to keep it kind of sloped in towards the car body here, though. That's the only thing that I'm sort of going for, or trying to kind of represent, so you guys can kind of see what I'm doing there. So working around the walkway, it gets a little bit more tricky, and there's a pretty significant buildup of the snow on the walkway in the movie if you watch it anyway. I'm going to take my number 2 X-Acto, not the chisel this time, to get in that more precise area here. We're going to need to be a little bit more careful of my build up here. So again, I'm just going to carefully kind of work it around. Let's see here. I'll try to tuck it up against the emery receptacle here. There we go. I'm just trying to tuck it in this little corner here. And again, kind of against that little corner there. There we go. Here especially you can kind of see that how I'm kind of sloping it in and then bring it out, basically taking it out flush with the base of the sill there. And again, I'm just kind of trying to keep it random here. That pretty much completes the side. So if I take it off, you guys can kind of see how it's packed down there all the way around, and on the opposite side. Now what I'm going to start doing is cleaning some of this extra stuff off here real quick. I'll come back. So the pilot's going to be especially difficult here, and the best thing to do when you got to get around all these little details and hoses and whatnot is to take, again, your smaller knife blade, get it tucked in there, and just try to work it in. Just use a little bit at a time. Don't try to go too overboard too quickly. Just try to build it up gradually, not all at once. I do gotta kind of tuck it under these hoses a little bit, but I'll have to pull them back out. Just gonna start trying to work it up there, flatten it out. With the easy part done, it's time to start tucking it underneath the sill here. And this is where it gets a bit trickier. But I'm just going to start tucking all this underneath the sill here. Get a little bit more here. Just got to be patient with this step. It does take a little time, but it'll look a little better once it's done. So at this point in time, the majority of the effects are on, but now it's time to kind of smooth some of these things out. With snow drifts and everything like that, they're usually going to stay relatively smooth. So how I do this at this point is I take a little bit more compound. I take a wet brush soaked in water, and I basically go in and start working it over the snow that I just applied, and just basically manipulate it and smooth it out. That way I can make some more convincing looking drifts. With the base done, it'll serve as a background for it, and then I can actually do the more realistic looking drifts and build up and everything else. You can even kind of pick some up in your brush to get in specific areas if you need to, such as around this fuel gauge. Just continue to kind of work it in. But this is a really good technique for just kind of smoothing things out, especially if you're going to do the spackling technique. At least this is what I found. That just kind of helps to make it look a little better. And then again, just taking the time to smooth it out with a brush and make it look a little bit more natural, like actual snow buildup. If you look at pictures of Canadian locomotives, anything like that, or any kind of locomotive that's out in the snow, even here in America, in a really thick snow storm or anything like that where the buildup is pretty significant, you'll see the drifts and how they build up sort of on the underbody of these locomotives, and they're always really smooth and packed together, and so that's the look that you're trying to achieve. So if you wanted to, you could probably look up some photos of Canadian locomotives or any kind of trains in snowstorms, watch videos of them, and just kind of see how the snow packs on to kind of get a basic idea. Again, I'm just